This is the story of Marcus Bennett and his wife, Rachel Bennett. The mug she always left on his side of the sink, not hers, not theirs, just his, always slightly too close to the edge, had become the thing he noticed first every morning. Not her, the mug. That particular displacement had been happening for almost a year before Marcus understood what it meant. Not the mug itself, of course, but what it said about distance, that two people can share a sink, a bed, a last name, and still arrange the small objects of their lives in ways that quietly exclude each other. They had been married 6 years, long enough for comfort. Long enough for comfort to curdle slowly into something that resembled it but wasn't. Marcus was a civil engineer, methodical, deliberate, a man who solved problems by first understanding their load-bearing points. He loved Rachel in the way people love something they built carefully, with pride that was inseparable from ownership and a fear of cracks that kept him from looking too closely at the foundation. Rachel was sharper, more restless, a woman whose charm operated like weather, warm and enveloping when it turned toward you, indifferent when it didn't. She had loved Marcus deeply once. That wasn't in question. What was in question, though neither would have said it aloud, was whether that love had been slowly replaced by something more comfortable, and whether comfortable was enough. Tyler Marsh had been Marcus's best friend since university. He came for dinner twice a month, drank Marcus's good whiskey, laughed too easily at everything. Marcus liked that about him. Rachel had always seemed merely tolerant of Tyler, slightly impatient with his jokes, quick to refill his glass just to have something to do with her hands. Marcus had noticed this and concluded it meant nothing. He was wrong, but not yet. On a Thursday evening in October, Marcus came home to the smell of garlic and rosemary and found Rachel at the stove, her back to him, Tyler sitting at the kitchen island with a beer and a comfortable posture that belonged to someone who spent time in that chair. The scene was ordinary. That was the thing about it, entirely, unremarkably ordinary. Marcus set down his bag, loosened his collar, and said something about traffic. Tyler responded. Rachel didn't turn around. "You stayed for dinner?" Marcus asked Tyler. Rachel said there was enough. Tyler shrugged, the easy shrug of a man without guilt, or a man very practiced at it. "There's always enough," Rachel said, still not turning. Marcus pulled out the stool beside Tyler and sat down. He poured himself a glass of water, watched the back of his wife's neck. The kitchen was warm. The conversation moved to other things. A mutual friend's promotion, a rugby match, a restaurant they should all try sometime. Marcus laughed in the right places. He was good at the right places. Later, after Tyler left and they were washing up, Rachel reached past him for the dish towel and her elbow grazed his arm. Brief, automatic. The touch of someone who knows a body so well it no longer requires intention. Marcus caught her hand, held it just a moment. She looked at him. Something moved across her face. Not guilt, not yet readable as anything. And then she smiled, the small, tired smile of a woman who has been smiling in the right places for a long time. "You okay?" he asked. "Just tired," she said. He believed her. He wanted to believe her. And wanting is its own kind of architecture. It holds the weight for a while of almost anything. He set the mug back on his side of the sink before going to bed. Closer to the center this time, she didn't comment. That silence, too, was a kind of answer, though he wouldn't understand it until much later. The winter came in cold and fast that year, the kind that made the house feel both too small and too large depending on the hour. Marcus noticed things the way engineers notice things, not dramatically, but incrementally, logging data without yet running the analysis. Rachel's phone, which had once lived carelessly on countertops and couch cushions, now traveled with her from room to room. She had started taking longer in the bathroom at night, her laughter on calls. He could hear it from the hallway, low and easy and entirely different from the laughter she used with him. He told himself it was a phase, that marriages had seasons, and they were in a cold one, and cold ones passed. They still had good evenings. That was the complicated part. Saturday mornings with coffee and the paper, the way she still reached for his hand in movie theaters, reflexively without thought. Flashes of the early years, bright and brief like light through a closing shutter. He held on to those. He built things from them. One night in January, they were at the kitchen table after dinner, the remains of a meal between them, and Rachel was talking about a co-worker. "Daniel," she said, "someone new in her department. Very driven, interesting perspective on the quarterly projections." She was saying this to the table more than to him, which was how she talked when she was performing normalcy. You talk about him a lot, Marcus said. Not accusatory, observational. Rachel looked up. Do I? This week, yes. She tilted her head, a gesture that could mean thinking or deflecting, the two being, in her case, sometimes indistinguishable. He's just interesting. He reminds me of how I used to think about work, how you used to think. Before it all became, I don't know. She waved a hand. Routine. Marcus looked at her. She looked back. The moment had the quality of a held breath. I feel like that applies to more than work, he said. She didn't answer immediately. Then maybe. I don't know, Marcus. I don't know how to explain it. You could try. I could, she said, and didn't. He didn't push. That was his particular failure. The way he processed difficulty quietly and expected others to do the same. The way he confused patience with avoidance and called it temperament. That weekend, Tyler came over. The three of them watched a film, a thriller none of them were particularly invested in, and at some point Marcus fell asleep on the couch and woke to the credits and an empty room. He could hear Rachel and Tyler in the kitchen, voices low, and when he walked in they were standing on opposite ends of the counter. Nothing wrong with that picture, except the quality of the silence that arrived with him. Didn't realize I'd dozed off, Marcus said. You were out for 40 minutes, Tyler said with his easy grin. Rachel was already moving to stack the glasses. I'll clean up. Later, much later, when he was trying to remember the chronology, Marcus would identify that evening as the seam. The place where the fabric was already torn, just folded in on itself so the damage didn't show. In March, he found the video. He had been using Rachel's laptop for a work file she'd offered to transfer. A simple thing. 2 minutes of task, and the folder was mislabeled, and he opened the wrong one, and the file was there. Unlabeled. A few seconds before he understood what he was watching, Tyler, Rachel. A hotel room he didn't recognize. He closed the laptop. He sat at the desk for a very long time. The house was quiet. Outside, a car passed. Someone's dog barked twice and stopped. He didn't feel what he expected to feel. He felt instead an odd, heavy clarity, the sensation of something that had always been structurally unsound finally acknowledging its own failure. Not surprise, not even rage, just the long, slow sound of weight coming down. He looked at the laptop. He thought almost absently, I wonder if anyone else is watching this unfold. I don't know, maybe like this story or subscribe or something. He blinked. The thought was strange, directionless, belonging to no part of him he recognized. He let it pass. He sat alone in the quiet room until Rachel's keys turned in the front door. She came into the room still unwinding her scarf, talking about parking, about a pharmacy that had closed early, ordinary civilian complaints about an ordinary evening. She got 3 sentences in before she registered his stillness. He was sitting at the desk, hands flat on the closed laptop. Rachel stopped. The silence between them was different from all their previous silences, not the comfortable kind, not the tired kind. This one had structure, it had weight. Marcus, she said. Sit down, he said quietly, not commanding, just requesting, in the way of someone who needs the geometry of the room to stay stable. She sat on the edge of the bed, still in her coat. She already knew. He could see it in how she held her shoulders, that particular bracing that precedes not surprise but consequence. The folder was mislabeled, he said, a long pause. I know, she said. Tell me it was a long time ago. She didn't answer, which was its own answer. How long, he asked. 4 months. Her voice was low, looking at the floor. It started in September. September. He ran a brief, involuntary inventory. September, the weekend he'd been at a conference in Bristol. September, Tyler's birthday dinner, where Rachel had been quiet and he'd assumed she was tired. September, was it? Did you? He stopped, rebuilt the sentence. Do you love him? The question surprised her. He could see that. She had perhaps expected accusation and had prepared for defense, and the question disarmed her in a way that exposed something more honest. No, she said. And then, more quietly, I don't think I even like him that much. Then why? Not a question exactly. More like the beginning of one he wasn't sure he could finish. Rachel looked up. Her eyes were wet, but she wasn't crying, that particular state of spended grief. Because he looked at me like I was the most interesting person in the room, she said. And I know how that sounds. I know. It sounds like something I should have done differently. Don't do that, she said. Don't do what? Take the blame for something I chose. He looked at her for a long time. She looked back. He thought about the 6 years, the mug by the sink, the movie theaters, and her hand finding his. The way she used to call him on her lunch break for no particular reason, just to hear his voice, and how that had stopped and he had not noticed when. I want Tyler out of our lives, he said. Okay, and I want to try. The words were effortful. I don't want to throw this away without, I need to know if it's worth trying. Rachel pressed her fingers to her eyes. When she lowered them, something in her face had shifted. Relief and guilt so intertwined they occupied the same expression. It's worth trying, she said. I want it to be. He didn't go to her. She didn't come to him. They sat in their respective places in the room, and the decision sat between them like a thing not yet given form, not yet sure what it would become. Tyler never came to the house again. He sent one message to Marcus. I'm sorry. I won't make excuses. Marcus didn't respond. There was nothing in him that wanted to. They started over, careful as demolition in reverse. By August, the house had a different temperature. Not warm, not cold, but something calibrated, intentional. They had learned to be careful with each other in the way that people handle things that have been repaired, gently, with awareness of where the seams are. Rachel had become, in the months after the confrontation, a version of herself that Marcus recognized as performance. Not malicious. He didn't think that. She was trying. He believed that. But there is a difference between transformation and effort, and what Rachel had deployed was effort. Showing up earlier, asking questions she waited for him to answer, initiating the small physical gestures that had once been natural, and now arrived with the slightly too deliberate quality of rehearsal. He told himself this was enough. That effort was the beginning of transformation, and he should give it time. He gave it time. What he noticed, beginning in September, almost exactly a year after the first, were the small, familiar shifts. The phone again. The late hours at the office, inconsistent with her actual workload, which he knew because she talked about it when things were busy and went quiet when they weren't. A name. Daniel, the coworker she had mentioned once and then stopped mentioning, conspicuous in his absence. Marcus understood then that she had not stopped saying the name because she had stopped thinking about him. She had stopped saying it because she had started to be careful. He sat with this knowledge for 2 weeks before deciding what to do with it. The decision came to him not as a revelation but as the quiet conclusion of a very long calculation. He was an engineer. He understood that certain structures, once compromised at the foundational level, cannot bear the same load they were designed for. You could reinforce them, patch them, make them functional, but they would never be what they were meant to be, and insisting otherwise was not optimism. It was negligence. He made an appointment with a solicitor on a Wednesday afternoon. He told Rachel he had a client meeting. Over the following 3 weeks, he moved with a precision that would have surprised people who knew him as gentle. He was gentle. He was also methodical, and those things had never been in contradiction. He understood their assets completely. He always had, being the one who managed their finances, a role that had once simply been practical and was now something else. He moved what was legally his to move. He documented what needed documenting. He was careful to stay within the law, which was not difficult, because most of what needed doing was simply a matter of clarity and timing. He did not tell Rachel. He asked himself once if this was cruelty, considered it genuinely, concluded that it was not. That cruelty would have been confrontation without consequence, the second forgiveness, the third opportunity. What he was doing was, in its own way, the most honest thing he had done in a year. Acknowledging a truth without requiring her to perform remorse again. Rachel, in those same weeks, was managing her own interior narrative with the focused efficiency of someone rewriting a story they need to believe. The first time had been a crisis, a failure of judgment. Something survived. This time was different. Daniel was different, she told herself. More understanding than Tyler had ever been. Less interested in the dramatic and more in the quiet. Sustained attention that Marcus had always been too internal to provide. She was not a bad person. She was someone who had needs that her marriage did not meet, and that was not so simple as anyone wanted to make it. She deserved to be truly seen. Most people would understand if they knew the full picture. The full picture being, of course, edited. She planned to end it with Daniel. She always planned to end it. The planning was a part of the architecture that kept her self-image intact. She brought Marcus coffee on a Sunday morning and sat beside him on the porch and commented on the neighbor's new garden. And he said it looked nice. And they sat in the thin autumn sunlight saying ordinary things. And Rachel thought, we're okay. I think we're actually okay. Marcus looked at the garden, thought of nothing in particular, or perhaps thought of everything in a register too quiet to be called thought. He had filed the papers on Friday. The letter arrived on a Tuesday. Rachel saw it before Marcus came home. His solicitor's name in the return address, the particular weight and formality of the envelope that could mean nothing good. She opened it, read it twice, sat at the kitchen table with it in her hands while the light shifted from afternoon to early evening. When she heard his car in the drive, she did not move. He came in, set down his bag, saw her at the table, the letter visible between her hands. "How long?" she said. "A few weeks." He took off his jacket, hung it by the door, came into the kitchen but didn't sit. "I filed on Friday. Were you ever going to tell me before?" "I just did." The answer was quiet and complete, and she found she couldn't argue with it. "Daniel," she said finally. "Not a question, yes." She looked down at the letter. It wasn't the same as Tyler. Daniel was Rachel. He said her name in the way he'd said it since the beginning, with the two-syllable exactness of someone who had always taken care with it. "Don't." She stopped. "I'm not angry," he said, and she understood, hearing it, that this was true and also worse than anger would have been. "I spent a long time being angry. I'm past it." "Then why?" "Because I'd rather end something honestly than maintain it dishonestly." He was looking at her steadily. "We both deserve that." Rachel felt the specific grief of being seen clearly for the first time in a very long time. Not flattered, not blamed. Just seen, in full, without the version she'd been constructing. "I thought we were repairing," she said. "I know you did." He paused. "I think part of you believed it." She looked at him across the kitchen. 6 years of dinners on that table. His tools in the garage. The mug she'd always left too close to the edge. She thought about Tyler. The humiliation of being forgiven and then failing that forgiveness. She thought about Daniel, who had not returned her message from Sunday, who had been increasingly brief in his responses since last week, who she was beginning to understand had his own quiet exits in progress. She was looking at a very specific kind of aloneness, not the dramatic cinematic kind, but the quiet, interior kind that accumulates in the space between who you intend to be and who you keep becoming. "Where will you go?" she asked. "I have a place." He'd arranged it a week ago, his sister's spare room, just until he found something. He had not told Rachel about the calls to his sister, who had said "I wondered when," in the way of someone who loved him and had been watching for a long time. He picked up his bag. He had a case in the bedroom already packed. "Marcus." He turned in the doorway. She looked at him. There was a version of this moment in which she said the right thing, the true thing, the thing that was neither excuse nor appeal but simple acknowledgement. She could feel it existing, just out of reach, the way a word sometimes does when you need it most. "I did love you," she said. "I want you to know that. It was real." He considered this. The evening light was pale behind him, the kitchen soft and still in the way of kitchens in houses where something is ending. "I know," he said. "I loved you too." He said it in the past tense. She noticed. He had meant her to. He left. Rachel sat at the kitchen table for a long time. The letter was still in her hands. The house made its small sounds. The refrigerator's hum, a pipe settling. Ordinary sounds, going on the way they always had, indifferent to what had just occurred. She was alone in a way that wasn't about the empty house. It was about the sequence of choices that had led here, each one small enough, in the moment, to be minimized. The sum of them was sitting at this table, holding this letter in the silence that Marcus had not created for her, but that she had made, gradually and thoroughly, herself. Outside, his car started. She listened to it until she couldn't anymore.